Hi, it's Heather from Flowers by Jenny Lynn, and today we are going to design a bright arrangement, something that has a little bit of springy tones to it, something bold. During this time of year, it's great to use bright colors because everything outside is kind of dreary. The leaves haven't come onto the trees yet, so we just need something to pick us up. Many times we will sell arrangements as a pick-me-up bouquet. So it has that kind of a thought process when I designed this for us to do for a class. So let's go through the supplies that we have, okay? You're going to have a blue vase. You're going to have some packets of flower food. Put one in with your water for now. It will dissolve. And then save the other packet when you're going to replenish your water in a couple days. You're going to remove everything, and we'll talk about that again. Put new water and new flower food in. Now for our flowers and our foliage. We have some leather leaf or Baker fern. You're going to have 5 stems of this, nice big pieces. You're also going to have 2 pieces of Israeli ruscus. Many of the things that we're using today are long lasting because we want to get the longest length out of our arrangement for us to enjoy. So keep that in mind when we're going through these. We are going to use some roses. They look like they're full blown, but they are really hard. I can't even squeeze tight. It is such a high petal count. These are called country blue. So they are a pink rose, but because they lean towards the purple color, that's where they get the blue from. In the name, anytime that a flower has blue in its name, it kind of is more purple and hinting towards the blue tone of the pink or the purple. You are going to have some yarrow, which is a very hardy flower, and you're going to have 3 stems of them. This will just dry right in place. It's kind of great. You're going to have some hot pink carnations. You're going to have some purple liatris. You are going to have some solidago, 2 stems of those. I realized did not do counts. You're going to have 2 solidago, 3 of the purple liatris, 3 of the yarrow, and 3 of the carnations, if I hadn't mentioned those already. You're going to have 2 stems of our purple statice. In this lighting, it looks blue, but in person, you will see that it is very purple. And then you are going to have some orange toned alstroemeria. They are also long lasting. So lots of fun stuff for us to play with, all with different characteristics. So let's get started. So again, like I said, you're going to fill up your vase with water. You're going to bring it up to this neck area where it kind of curves in. That's a good line to stop with your water. And we're going to make with our foliage our grid or our platform for all of our flowers to stand on. So first we're going to start with the leatherleaf Baker fern, and we're going to work around our arrangement and get 1 up into the center area, or 3 and then 2. You'll just feel once you see your stems, some are going to be a little skinnier, some are going to be a little fatter, so you might want to place them accordingly. I usually put my thin ones around the edge and my fat ones in the center. That way they take up the most amount of room in that visual area up here. You can use a knife if you're comfortable with them. This is a florist knife. It's like a Swiss Army knife. It is a Swiss Army knife, but they come in cool colors. So everyone in the shop tends to choose a color. That way we know whose knife it is. Or you can use kitchen scissors, or these are florist scissors as well from the Meraki line of scissors. All right, so we're going to start by cutting our stems at an angle, always at an angle. It allows the flowers to rest on the bottom without going full down flat and not being able to suck anything up. And kind of like a Slurpee straw, it kind of gets suction to the bottom. Flowers do that too because they continue to drink. So when I am measuring, if you can see, right here is the bottom of my stem. I still have more room between my flower, between my top and my bottom, where the stem ends and the base. And also I want this last level of brackets of our fern to rest on the lip of the vase. So I don't necessarily want the stem to all the way hit the bottom, but to be in that fatter area here, kind of like hanging on the side. So if I put 1 in to one side, and like I said, if I'm going to do 3 of them, I'm going to pick my smaller stems. And again, I usually measure it up to make sure that the lowest part of the lower leaves are going to sit on the edge, and that my end is in this fat area, not all the way down to the bottom. Many times I'll recut. So because I'm doing 3, think of a triangle. And here's my last one. Again, I'll show you my measurement so that where it will rest, the stem is in this fat area. So all 3 of my stems are kind of crisscrossing one another so that they are starting to form a grid. And then I'm going to place my last 2 upwards in my arrangement, and they can be a little taller, so I'm not going to cut off as much. But because the greenery is already lacing together and forming a grid, they'll stand up straighter now. And I might be able to take the vase down off of my riser so that you can see more of the arrangement as we go. It's got 3 on the sides, 2 in the center, and then I'm going to put in my 2 pieces of Israeli ruscus. I am going to remove some of this lower foliage. It's just going to get lost in the way. And then I'm going to give a nice cut to it, taking off about 3 inches, give or take. This arrangement is going to be taller. Our vase that I chose is already a taller vase, so we want to capitalize on that and make our arrangement tall. There we go. Let me move my riser out of the way so now you can just concentrate on the flower part. I wanted you to see the full length of the vase when I was talking about it and getting initially set up. All right, so now that we have all our greenery in play, we can start working with our flowers. And I do tend to start working with things that are going to help with our network, strong stems. So I'm going to work with our Alstroemeria and our Solidago. So if you want to get those to the ready, that's what we're going to work with next. We only have 2 of the Solidago, so I'm going to basically either go side to side or front to back, having them at opposite sides of the arrangement. And I'm going to cut off probably half of the stem. I do want them to sit down lower in the arrangement. See, I'm cutting off at about half of the stem, not all the way half, but just about. I don't need these to be taller than my other flowers. I do want something like my liatris to be tall, so I'm reserving the height for them. Now we're going to work with our Alstroemeria. They are very tall. That's why they're good for working with bouquets, because you can put them in at any height. But where I want them to reside is right here in this middle area. I don't want them down on the lip. I don't want them flying up high. I kind of want them in this middle area. So I'm going to measure. Here is my vase back here. I'm going to cut right about here so that you can see. And again, always cutting everything at an angle. So when I put that in, it can rest on the side and I don't push them straight down. I enter my flowers into my vase at an angle so that, again, we're increasing our grid work in there. And see how it just stays where you put it because everything is starting to lock together, all those stems. I'm going to do the same thing with my next one, basically keeping them roughly the same height as one another. I'm going to put one towards the back. And as you're putting them in, if you can see my flower is dancing, it's because as I'm putting it in, I might feel a little resistance. So by turning it a little bit, I can kind of feel my way into that grid work so that I'm not forcing the other stems down in and under the water. All right, and again, I'm cutting at an angle. I'm going to put this one in over here. Okay, and sometimes I'm looking to see as far as face that I'm not putting in so that we're looking at all the backs. These would be all the backs of the blooms because they tend to all bloom in the same direction. So, oh, see how we're looking at the faces? So we want them to be showing. So make sure when you're putting in your flower stems that you're looking to see where their faces are looking. That way, those are facing out of the arrangement and not in. All right, so next, we're going to work with our hot pink carnations and our country blue roses. So let's work with the country blue roses first. They are larger, and I'm going to go through the treatment of both of these flowers together. So we do have some foliage on the stem, which is great, but you don't need all of it. I'll probably remove those 2 down here and leaving just like the top few up here. Now, if you look at all those petals, they do have guard petals on the side. And what I mean by guard petals are these petals here that have a little bit of that green still on it. That's from when it was closed up tight, and these were protecting or guarding the rose before it opened. So we can take some of those off. It helps to encourage the rose to bloom open. You will get a long life out of these because of how many petals are actually in. They are a cross of a regular rose and a garden rose, which is so fun. Look at all those petals in there. Now this one has a little bit of extra on the thorns, and I'm just going to trim them off a little bit. You don't need to. If they are kind of pointy and bothering you, you can certainly knock them off either with your thumb, your knife, or your scissors. Again, I'm just peeling off a couple. If you like them and they're not bothering you, some people really love those petals that are on the outside of the roses. They just have that more natural, that garden look to them. So by all means, leave them on there. You don't have to pick them back. And again, if there is that thorn that is kind of prickly and bothering you, you can knock that right off. So we're going to take off some of those outer petals of our country blue. And there's a whole line of this type of variety of rose. Country Sun is yellow. Country Home is peach. So they are really neat. All right, so with the carnations, we're not going to leave these lower leaves on here. We're going to pull them off. Be careful when you're doing so that you don't pull so hard that you knock their knuckle off. And the knuckle is this part here that gets a little fatter, like on our fingers. So with our carnations, they will open up all by themselves, but if you want to encourage them to open so that they look nice and big for the arrangement that you're making, you can squeeze this green area called the calyx and fluff them right open, making them nice and plump. Kind of help it along a little bit. Again, taking off that lower foliage. It won't necessarily be under the water line, but it can get kind of tangled up when you're trying to push it through your other flowers and foliage. Now this has already broken. Is that a problem? No, because I don't need it to be this long. So I'm just going to take off that end there that was kind of hanging on by a thread, so to speak. And then we'll just cut it to the size that we need. All right, so let's get these 6 flowers in, 3 and 3 of each. Now, because I have 6 of them, I will put 2 down of each kind. So 2 carnations down, 1 carnation up, 2 roses down, 1 rose up. That way we've got some height variation in our roses and in our carnations. So I'm going to see, is there any height difference? There is. So I definitely know that I have one of shorter rose. So I'm going to make sure that he is on that lower level. Why fight? Why fight it? Leave the taller ones where we need our height. And again, I'm just kind of dancing that one into place. It's kind of on that same level that the Alstroemeria is. And then I'm going to get a second one. This is one of my 2 taller ones, but that's okay. It means we're cutting off more of the stem. I'm leaving a good amount on there. It's probably 16 inches long that we have. And I'm just going to be tucking this in, again, right around where our Alstroemeria is. And then my last one, who is tall, I'm going to have him up more in the center. I'm going to measure, cut, and then measure. See if I like that height. Pretty good. And I'm going to put him right in here. See that height going? All right, now with my carnations, we already know that I have a short one. So let's get him taken care of. We're just going to take a little bit off since he already was broken right by the knuckle. I'm going to get that in right by one of my Alstroemeria. Just kind of tucked underneath. And then on the other side, because I had an Alstroemeria, a rose, and an Alstroemeria, so I'm going to have an Alstroemeria, a carnation, and an Alstroemeria. So let's get that in. We had to take probably 6 inches off of the stem there. There we go. Got him into play. And now I'm going to put my other one right about over here. Okay. So I won't need to take much off the stem. Tuck him right in. We are going to get our other flowers up into this area. And I realized that I sunk my Israeli ruscus too far, but that's good thing because we can always tuck them back up a little bit. So let's get our height in. Let's get our liatris into our arrangement, which will be our top pieces. And I'm just gonna see how tall they are. I'm only gonna take off a very little, maybe 1 inch to 1.5 inches. Always cutting on an angle. And I'm gonna get all 3 of them in there, taking off that lower tip of the flower. The really cool thing about Liatris is that it blooms backwards. There's a house near on my way into work, and they have a great big patch of it right by their mailbox. So you see when it blooms that it grows up tall, then it starts blooming from the top, which is reverse of what most other flowers do. Most flowers bloom from the bottom and finish off at the top, but these start at the bottom blooming, and you can see they're not open yet. So then it will start to bloom down, and this is where it will start to go brown and dead at the tip. Nature is fun. Okay, so now I have all 3 of my Liatris in there. Up tall, just a little taller than my carnations and my roses that are the tall ones. Next, I'm going to put in my yellow yarrow. And again, this is a great dried flower. So I'm going to get it up into this top area as well, right up into here. Because I have my yellow solidago down a little lower. I only need to take off about 1 inch or 2. Now, sometimes the yarrow wants to have a mind of its own. I just tried to put it so that its face was sticking out, and it decided to turn around again. The nice thing about working in a vase with water is you can go back in and readjust. When you're working with foam, you don't want to make too many, we'll just call it a mistake or a misstep with putting it in, taking it out, shoving it back in again, pulling it out, shoving it back in. You're creating multiple holes in the foam. But when we're working with a vase and fresh water, you can keep readjusting as you go along because you're not changing anything about the composition of the water in the vase. It's a really great medium to work in. So let me bring it down a little bit further so you can see. There we go. All right, and last but not least is our status, our purple, which looks blue, status. And the nice thing is that in the picture, it does very much go nicely with our blue vase. And in person, it goes very nicely because blues and purples are wonderful to work together. And I'm just, I just didn't explain it. I'm taking off my status from the major stem, cutting at an angle, leaving this piece nice and long. Sometimes I will take off these little side pieces here, these little ruffles that are on the edge. When you see it in person, you'll know what I mean. And sometimes I'm just peeling it back. Now this flower, I'm tucking in between all my other ones. I'm finding all these side pieces, cutting them back, tucking it in. Finding another side piece, cutting it back. My hope is that with all of your pieces that you will have a decent amount. Sometimes we'll only get a piece that will have 3. So we have to put this in as a whole because we can't break this one off. He will not reach the water. So sometimes we are lucky and we get these nice long laterals on the side. So now with these, I'm left with these 2 here with very short stems, so to speak. These would be great in centerpiece or in foam work. And again, I'm just taking off some of this extra. There we go. And now I can place him up higher in the arrangement. Move this one down a little bit because I've got a perfect spot right here for this one. And I've got most of the stem, cut off maybe 4 inches of the stem, cutting off all of this stuff that would be below the water line. There we go. Put this piece up here. So this is a full all-around arrangement. In person, you can see all the different colors that are vibrant and playing off of one another. It's really, really wonderful. So this is our finished design. I hope you have enjoyed it. Just always remember, in a couple days, let's say 3 days, you're going to want to check your water level every day. But on the third day, you can take out your whole arrangement. They've all been laced together nicely. Lay your arrangement down on the counter, dump out the water, put in new water. It can be cold or lukewarm, doesn't have to be hot, and then put that packet back in. With your flowers, you're going to want to check to see if any of them are browning. So if they're browning, you're going to want to get your scissors out. We'll pretend that this is day 3. We're going to give everybody a new cut. Take off at least a ½ inch. That way you can reopen the cells of the flowers so that they can drink again. They start to close up, just like our body does when we get cut. We start to close up and form a scab. So do flowers. I said we can tuck that right back in again. Our arrangement has stayed in shape. You can probably like move things around a little bit if you felt that they kind of moved out of the way when you put it onto the counter, but it will stay together as a whole arrangement. You don't have to redesign it. And then every couple days, check its water line. You do want that water to be right up around this neck area. And then again, you can replenish the water in another 3 days. I hope you've enjoyed working with me. This is Heather from Flowers by Jenny Lynn. And you can check out our YouTube channel, which has other videos so you can follow along, come in and pick out a video and work with me. It's good to have you. Have a great day.